Well, you were telling me this morning that you've had a bit of a breakthrough. Can you give me an update?
Well, you could call it a breakthrough or a breakdown. I belong to Clan McLennan Worldwide, and I've been quite excited about being a McLennan, but this morning everything's changed.
Tell me more.
Well, as part of Clan McLennan, they have this huge database with 40,000 people on it, and you can look up, if you're a McLennan and you've paid your $45 annual fee, you can look up which McLennan you are, and it gives perfect details about their name, their age, their date of birth, their date of death, details. For example, McKenzie McLennan, the matriarch who brought our family out, it describes an article in the Otago Times, I think it is, where she was crossing the floor in an upstairs room at her daughter's house, and she tripped over a mat and she sustained a serious fracture to her femur. Now, I know that she lived for 6 years after that. It describes how the doctor set her femur, and as an orthopaedic nurse, I know that you wouldn't be able to do that. It would need, nowadays, screws and plates, or maybe a big, like a Thomas splint, you know.
Yeah.
And you'd be stuck up in traction nowadays for 6 weeks, and in those days you would have got pneumonia from that, and or died of a urinary tract infection. So those sort of things, the Clan McLennan database is absolutely brilliant. This is the birth certificate. The man that she married is John McLennan, aged 52, and the person who is the matriarch who brought us out to New Zealand is Catherine McKenzie, and she's aged 20. So over here it says, it's always hard to read this handwriting, on the 29th, married on the 29th day of July 1856 at Urquhart, marriage after the banns were read according to the Free Church of Scotland. So it also says where she lived, her residence, at the time of his marriage and her marriage. And she was residing at a place called Balnabeen, which took me a long time to find, so I've got to find out more about that. I've got an idea that Balnabeen is a landed gentry's house, or somebody who's got a big house and they employ people. So, the fact that he's in Bewley, Kilmorrock, will take me to his previous marriage, I imagine. I can go to statistics and find out other people in Bewley, Kilmorrock, and I'll tell you more about that soon. So the point of interest is that the name and surname profession of the father and the name and maiden surname of the mother, here we find out that Alexander McLennan is John McLennan's dad, and he was a farmer, and the mum is Sarah McLennan, of course, but her maiden name was Fraser. Can you read Fraser in that? It took a bit of doing. I think her name is Jessie Fraser, and then these are the signatures of the witnesses. Now, why this is so highly significant, because on the McLennan database, the father of John is not Alexander. The significance of his father not being Alexander is that when we follow Alexander's parents back and Sarah's parents back, this will all be new territory to us, because we have been following other people's names back into the 1600s. And also down here we can see that Catherine McKenzie, her father is Donald McKenzie, who's a farmer, and the mother is also Anne McKenzie. So it says here the maiden name is McKenzie. So 2 Mackenzies married. Now this is exactly right. So we've got Catherine McLennan, but now we've got a different John McLennan that she married. So that's of great interest, because when we go to, this is my tablet, but this is ancestry.com. Catherine McKenzie, born 1816, died 1905 at Port Chalmers at her daughter's house. And it says we don't actually know her birth date. There's no birth certificate for her. And it says that by the time she reached 24, she had her first son, Alexander McLennan. And then it says that in 1841 she lodged at Cooper Street, Lochhalsh, which I think is Plockton before they called it Plockton, and she was 20, and John is married to her according to ancestry.com, and that they married on the 29th of July 1856, but we're still at 1841. Do you see that? She's in 1841, she has one baby called Alex, who's 1 year old, and in the household there's another Catherine McLennan who's 25-year-old who has a baby also, and there's a fisherman, a farmer, a tailor, 2 farm servants, a child who's 10, and an agricultural labourer who's 8 years. Now I know from looking at this wonderful book here, the Scottish Clearances, this is the newest piece of history about the Scottish Clearances, and every paragraph is so intensely filled with information that I have to highlight it and write myself notes to try and remember what they're saying. But they're saying by the time of 1840, the Highlanders were no longer abiding by subsistence rules. They actually, the ones that were motivated, actually included in their households other trades. So they were beginning to make their own money and not give all their money to the hierarchy of the clan. So this is good news that John had in his household fishermen, of course, because he owned a boat, and that he also had accommodation for a farmer, which was probably a relation of his, and farm servants to look after the house, and a tailor. So that's pretty cool. And there he is with Catherine, who he's not married to yet, and it says that this baby is hers, but of course Alex might not have been her baby. He might have been the baby of his current wife. So then we go on to the next residence when she's 35 years old in 1851. Remember, she's still not married, and it says that she's the wife of a ship owner. Alexander is a son who's 10 years old. Kenneth is a scholar, and he was born in 1844. Catherine has a daughter who was born in 1845, and then there's the twins, one of whom is my grandma, and they were born in 1849, and she's still not married. So this is a bit of a scandal, or a necessary way of behaving. And over here I haven't even got the parents written in, because I was so unsure. I was always uncertain about the John McLennan that Catherine was married to, because Clan McLennan state that the certificate of his death is incorrect. It could be the certificate they were all depending on for his death in 1858, which is 2 years after their marriage, has got his mother as a Janet, and that didn't fit the statistics that we had. So we've never really had his correct death certificate. So that's something we can look forward to now, because the wonderful statistics of the birth say that his father was actually Alexander McLennan and his mother was Sarah McLennan Fraser. So we'll be able to track that down. An example of how I track things down, I'll show you.
You'll have to give me a...
So yesterday, Alvin, I was looking up some Frasers who would be living with McLennans, and I found an Alexander McLennan, can you see that? Who's 36 years old, and he's at Kilmorrock, Bewley. Remember on the marriage certificate, his residence was Kilmorrock, was Bewley, Kilmorrock. So we find that in Bewley there is an Alexander McLennan who's a wheelwright. Now that's not likely to be the husband, it's likely to be the father, who is Alexander McLennan. So that could be his father as a wheelwright. And in the house is, they call it Janet Wazer, that's right. So when you open that, it just says Janet Wazer is Fraser, and it just says she's a female. So I don't know, but the thing is that Alexander McLennan is the dad of John McLennan, and he is at Kilmorrock and he is at Bewley, and he's in a household of Frasers who are all tradespeople. So that's who he's mixing with. He's working in amongst people who are working for wages. And this is probably John's father. And that's how we have to sort it out. And on this computer, and here we have a printout on my family tree of the Sarah Fraser, and her spouse being Alexander McLennan, and one of her children is John McLennan. There he is there, 1803 to 1858. So that's what it's like filling out your ancestry tree. In summary, I just want to say that making mistakes is normal and usual, and often you have to put some statistics in and have them critiqued by somebody else before you find out that you've made a genuine mistake. And Clan McLennan did acknowledge that they didn't believe that the death certificate was really John McLennan's death certificate. And so that raised the awareness of the possibility that the birth certificate, which is gone or probably was never filled out, and the marriage certificate is surprisingly different. And one has to consider that even the marriage certificate might be incorrect, but it looks right because it's got Catherine's actual parents, and it's got the fact that they are both Mackenzies married together. And then we search and we find that those particular parents and John's parents all lived in the vicinity of each other. So it just all raises the probabilities that we've got the correct dates.